I want to thank you all for coming here today. We are here today to announce the multi-agency takedown of a heroin pipeline reaching us here on Long Island and in New York City, all the way from Mexico. You're going to hear more about that in a moment, but I first want to acknowledge all the officials here today because this truly was a team effort on the local, state, and federal level. So first and foremost, to my right, I have Nassau County Executive Edward Mangano, Nassau County Police Department Commissioner Thomas Crumpter. To my left is Rick Whalen, who is the ADA Bureau Chief in charge of the Rackets Bureau. On behalf of New York City Special Narcotics Prosecutor Bridget Brennan, we have Nick Moore here, the nice orange tie. On behalf of the U.S. DEA Special Agent in charge John Hunt, we have Associate Special Agent in charge John Riley, right here. Deputy Inspector Patrick Courtwright from the NYPD. We also have Madeline Singus, my chief assistant in the DA's office. I already introduced you to Rick Whalen. And next to the commissioner are two ADAs, Christina Colon and Mayra Lopez of the Organized Crime and Rackets Bureau. They are going to be handling this case. Now, there's no question that everyone here knows that heroin addiction is a growing epidemic across New York, and certainly Nassau County and Suffolk County are no strangers to that epidemic. Drug treatment officials on Long Island, for example, have reported seeing a four-fold increase in intake for treatment since 2011. Addiction is taking a tragic toll here on Long Island. A record 121 people in Nassau and Suffolk died of heroin overdoses in 2012 and another 120 last year. We are seeing an upsurge in heroin arrests as well. Now, a lot of this is because of the success that law enforcement is having in the fight against prescription drug abuse, specifically by cutting off the supply of prescription drugs through the iStop doctor shopping database that I supported, that was written and supported as well by the Attorney General. That has gone a long way to ensuring that every single prescription that is written by a doctor or filled by a pharmacist is documented in a database in real time so that we can stop the doctor shopping and the pharmacy shopping that we know has resulted in too much tragedy here on Long Island. Unfortunately, a lot of those people who are addicted to prescription drugs, now that they don't have the easy access to them, they are turning to heroin. It is cheap, it's accessible, it is on every street corner across Long Island. Fortunately, we have great partners in law enforcement, like everyone who's standing up here today, who are helping us combat this epidemic. Now, the investigation we're announcing today started with 4 undercover purchases last year of about a pound of heroin by DEA agents and Nassau Police Department detectives who are working with our DA investigators in Manhasset and in Great Neck. Our investigation into the source of these drugs led us to partner with the Special Narcotics Prosecutor in New York City and the DEA's Drug Enforcement Task Force. What we discovered was that the source of the heroin is actually deep inside Mexico, with couriers transporting heroin and cash by cars and airplane to and from New York City. The traffickers used elaborate methods to disguise their schemes. Those traveling by car from Mexico decides, I think there are pictures, if you look over there, that is one of the cars that was used, what kind of, it's a SUV of some, Dodge Durango. You see they have the kayak on the roof, the bikes on the back, so it's trying to make it seem like this is just a family going on a vacation. The cargo, however, was far from family friendly, with 4 to 5 kilos of black tar heroin inside the air intake manifold of their Dodge Durango, which actually have to lift up the hood. It's actually in the engine, and we have to do a little digging to find it. Our partners put the value of this heroin at anywhere between $1.5 and $3 million. Others we arrested who flew in from California acted as mules, swallowing condoms or balloons of heroin and expelling them from their bodies in the Bronx apartment of one of our 4 defendants. In this enterprise, these drugs would get diluted, cut, packaged, and sold in our communities right here on Long Island, and the same couriers who brought the drugs here would carry cash back to the source in Mexico. One of our defendants from Queens also had a business of selling cocaine, ecstasy, and anabolic steroids via Craigslist. Of course, that kind of activity is banned by Craigslist, but sellers use coded language to try to evade detection, and sometimes, unfortunately, they are successful at that. So as you can see, these traffickers go to great lengths to move these drugs across the country, sell them in our communities, and buy them all over again. Thankfully, we in law enforcement also go to great lengths to stop these schemes. And so here you have an 18-month investigation. This was a very long investigation. It is still ongoing. We have, as I said, the cooperation of local, city, state, and federal officials, all working together to keep these dangerous illegal drugs out of our communities. Most of the defendants in this case face a maximum of 20 years to life in prison, and they will deserve every year, every minute, every day that they get if they're convicted of the top charge. And we will continue to prosecute crimes like this aggressively. This is one aspect of dealing with this heroin epidemic that is so incredibly important that we not that we continue to be aggressive in this regard. This case proves that the battle lines in our fight to save lives in the midst of a devastating heroin epidemic don't stop at the Long Island border, don't stop at the border going into the city, don't stop in other states. We're talking about going deep in the heart of Mexico, which is where these drugs are coming from. This joint investigation sends a strong message that those who profit from a drug trade causing misery and death for so many families will be held accountable at every level of our criminal justice system. Once again, I want to thank our partners who are with us here today. This truly was a team effort, and I'd like to, at this time, introduce County Executive Ed Mangano.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you very much. First, let me just acknowledge the great work of our District Attorney, Kathleen Rice. We're certainly going to miss you here and miss your leadership. You really have done a wonderful, wonderful job. And we wish you all the luck and success leading us in Congress. With that, I want to acknowledge all those in this room here that worked so hard to put these thugs away. Heroin is a scourge on our society. It's a national problem, and it's no exception here in Nassau County. In 2013, 44 people died of heroin overdoses and 115 from prescription drug overdoses just here in Nassau County. There have been far too many funerals, far too many families broken up, and today we make a dent in that pipeline. And I want to congratulate, so I don't leave anyone out, of course, District Attorney Rice, the DEA, our Nassau County Police Department, Commissioner Crumpter, New York State Police, the New York State Police Department, and the Office of Special Narcotics Prosecutor, and I hope I did not leave anyone out, because their work here will benefit our entire society here and our citizens here in Nassau County. So with that, they send a clear message: do not bring your drugs into our county. You will be caught and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And once again, I want to congratulate and thank every law enforcement professional in this room for the great work that they do day in and day out, and especially here today with this important announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive Mangano. Are there any questions about the case?
What kind of dent does this put in the big picture of the heroin trafficking and trade?
Well, certainly on Long Island here, I think it's going to put a dent. I'm not under any delusion that it's going to stop the heroin problem here. But this is one aspect of how you address a problem that has become so deeply ingrained in too many of our communities across Long Island, across this country. Having a robust law enforcement investigations like this is 18-month-long investigation. It involved poll cameras, wiretapping. And this was the investigators on this case stopped at nothing. These are dangerous defendants. They're dealing in multi-million-dollar amounts of drugs that they want to put on our streets into our children's hands. But I will say that, having all of you here and reporting on this is an incredibly important, it will have an incredibly important deterrent effect, I believe. That's why we do these things. That's why we make these announcements, so that people can see that they're not going to get away with it. And so I hope it will put some dent, but it's not going to, get rid of the epidemic for sure.
Would you categorize it as a large scale, mid?
I'd say it's pretty large scale. I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars in terms of the drugs that they wanted to put on the street. And there was no shortage of supply. The DEA is obviously is going to pursue this case. That's why I said this is still ongoing, because it's not something that stopped here at our borders.
Talk about the creativity involved in getting some.
Yeah, I'm going to bring Rick Waylon up so that he can give credit where credit is due and speak specifically,
Talk about
to the extent that he can, about some of the facts.
creativity that was involved in making it look like a family coming across the border to a car.
It's exactly what it looked like. A couple of guys on vacation, going kayaking, going biking, going hiking. That car, blends in. Traveled up from Mexico, through California, across the country, Colorado, made its way to New York, and just looks like a couple of people going on vacation, just unassuming, and that's how it was handled.
And can you describe, I mean, it was hard to see, like that bag, I guess, was under that trap there?
Yeah, that's correct. The picture to my right is the black tar heroin that was taken out of the engine block or the air intake manifold in the Durango. About 5 kilos of heroin, black tar heroin.
How-
Pretty well secreted, I mean, you
Yeah,
would
how
not.
innovative is that? I mean, you'd think they would burn up or something.
No, it was in a bag that insulated the heroin from burning. It was actually molded inside the intake manifold, put on top, screwed down, and was good to go when it got here.
Is this
Has
the
any
car?
of this heroin been tracked specifically to overdoses in Nassau County? Do we know if these guys have caused any deaths?
I can't answer that, I don't know, but I can tell you that what you see in front of you here, you see a pound of heroin that we bought during this investigation. A pound of heroin is a pound of poison, okay? So that never made it to the streets in Nassau County as a result of this investigation. Nor did the 5 kilos make it to the streets.
Was this the car that was found at the auto body shop in Astoria?
That's correct.
Okay, got it.
That's correct. That car actually made 2 trips. That car made a trip on or about August 13th. I'm stepping on your toes. If I step on your toes, you're gonna tell me. The SNC guy will correct me. August 14th, that car pulled into a body shop in Queens where it remained for 13 days, during which time we believe they emptied out the contents of the engine, the 5 or 6 kilos. And then 13 days later, we believe, loaded up the trap with cash, and sent it back on its way to Mexico, where it ended up. We know when it came through the border. When it came here, we know when it went back to Mexico.
Was there something unusual about the 4 undercover buys? I mean, it's a pound of heroin. Is that what you might normally see in an average seller? I mean, he's thinking he's dealing to a higher level dealer, right?
That's correct.
And what about that led you to then get all these other agencies involved? I mean, did you realize you were probably dealing with something larger here?
We did, but we literally ran into the other agencies out there. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to get this poison off the street. And we ran into the DEA task force out there. We had similar targets that we were looking at, and we decided to join forces. And it was phenomenal, collaborative investigation by this group up here, which we all share the same goal: get this poison off the street. And that's what it is. You call it heroin, I call it poison.
Do you know how long they were in business, this group, and the scope of how much drugs they sold?
This group, in particular, was on track to do 5 to 10 kilos a month, okay? So you could say that's anywhere from 3 to 6 or 6 to $12 million of heroin on the streets of New York a month. We can also tell you, because we had court-authorized wiretaps in this case, that the primary target, Romero Astudillo, had been working with one of his connections in Mexico for 7 years. So I would say for some time.
Was that apartment in the Bronx kind of the waste station where everything came into?
That was one of the locations where the product came into. They had it, we believe, moved around to various locations, so if law enforcement got wind of one of the locations and we executed a search warrant, then we wouldn't take all their product. They'd have product at other locations in the Bronx.
Do we know when the car crossed the border, if it was checked, and if it was just so well hidden that It was hard to
There's
detect.
no way they would have picked it up. A dog, a border dog, a patrol dog would not have picked it up, it was so well secreted.
So they're getting more and more creative.
Absolutely, yes.
So through the plastic that they use prevents the dog from smelling it, is that it?
It was vacuum sealed inside a car engine. Unlikely a dog's gonna detect that.
How typical is this method that they're using, and how many other pipelines you guesstimate are still out there?
You're asking me to speculate. I think that this was one of the busier heroin pipelines from Mexico. At least from what I've seen, I mean, I'll let the DEA or Special Narcotics Prosecutor comment further on that if you'd like.
Just get your name and spelling of your last name.
My name is Rick Whalen, W-H-E-L-A-N. I'm the Chief of the Organized Crime and Rackets Bureau